Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Crimson Crossover podcast presented by the Field of 68. I'm your host, Christian Sykes, joined as always by Charles Branch, Joey Blackwell, and Michael Harper. Guys, we're doing this a little bit differently than what we typically do. We're recording this directly after the Ole Miss game. Reasoning was schedules didn't really align as far as everyone getting on the podcast. And with us not really doing spaces anymore, I feel like it'd be a good time to for us to at least be able to talk about the game while it's fresh on our minds. And then with it being a little bit of a slower week as far as the games or level of competition, changing it up a little bit. So if you like this format, it might be something that we continue to do, might not be, but let us know. How have you guys been? It's been for Charles, it's been about a couple, what, 4 or 5 days since we've talked. For Joey and Michael, it's been a little bit over 2 weeks, at least for me talking to you guys. So how have you guys been?
First off, don't tell my wife that it's a slow week because Valentine's Day is this Saturday and she wouldn't like that. No, it's been good. And also another thing is I really like this format, but also please, if we're having like 8 or 9 p.m. tips, I don't know if I'd be able to
Oh
record
yeah,
after
that's true.
this.
Yeah.
These 6 p.m. tips though, I'll take it.
Yeah.
But glad to be here. Glad to be back. I know I'm glad to have a full roster on camera again.
Yeah,
Speak.
glad we've got everybody here tonight. Got finally have a full roster. The training staff got us ready to go, and we're all here together and ready for this stretch run going into March.
Yeah, never a dull moment with Alabama basketball, and obviously we'll dive into that more into this podcast. I think we hope the first half of this podcast is better than what we saw tonight. But if we can repeat the second half performance as what we just saw from this Alabama team, may go down as one of the best podcasts in Alabama Crimson crossover history. Correct?
Pretty close. If we can go 15 to 27 from beyond the arc on all of our topics and points. Hopefully we don't have 27 points, but um yeah, might be a long podcast. But before we get into the Ole Miss stuff, let's address the elephant in the room, no pun intended. The Charles Bediako ruling came down. We didn't get to talk about that on the podcast just because um, we didn't record. For people that don't know, which I assume everyone that's listening does know, or even if you're not listening, I think anyone in the country probably knows about the whole Charles Bediako ruling. He was not granted his preliminary injunction, which means he's ineligible to play the rest of the season. In theory, Chuck could decide to appeal that and get another temporary restraining order if he wanted to. I doubt that that happens. Um, but the expectation is that he's going to be probably with the team the rest of the year if he's not, since he's not playing. Um, from my perspective, it's a good ruling for college athletics and college basketball specifically. I'm not upset with it, nor did I think it was unexpected that the ruling came down that way. I think Charles's case was shaky at best, and I also think just from like a critic's point of view, I think his lawyers argued the wrong points as far as making an argument on, well, you're ruling this player that was professional basketball eligible after he went to the draft. What's the difference between that and what my case is? Things of that nature. And instead, they were ruling that there would be damages if and that he couldn't afford to pay for college, which is a crazy argument. So that's kind of my opinion. I also want to say that Alabama's not going to get vacated wins. I've been asked about 5 or 6 times if that was going to happen. Alabama's not, their wins aren't going to be vacated. How the NCAA tournament committee is going to be, judging is based off of, essentially saying that Charles was injured or they had a player come back from injury, played those 5 games, and now they're not playing anymore. Like that's what they're gonna look at it. And so I'm not super upset with it. I do wish that some of the arguments and some of the things that are being said by coaches would be a little bit more fleshed out. I think national media has done a terrible job with educating themselves on the situation, and it shows. as far as the conversations and dialogues that are happening around the country. So it's kind of my quick synopsis and feelings on the subject.
I'll go. I'm ready to go.
I think that silence was us all waiting for you to say something,
We were
Yeah.
Charles.
all waiting to see
Waiting for me to explode.
You did say you wanted to rant,
I did.
so
So I actually do not think this is a good ruling for college basketball in the NCAA. And this is not me trying to go from that, crimson colored glasses, whatever you want to call it. Like, obviously, I'm biased from the standpoint that I wanted this ruling to go in Charles Bediako's favor because it does give us a really good post threat. It gives us more depth, which would have been phenomenal. The main reason why I feel like this is not a good ruling for college basketball is because I do feel like if this ruling had gone in Charles Bediako's favor, it would have blown up the NCAA, which is what I feel like we really need. Charlie Baker's comments after this ruling came out were common sense won around and then immediately goes to we need Congress to step in and help. And y'all know my opinions on, the NCAA being bailed out by Congress. And to go a step further with that, they can't even come up with term regulations for these senators and House of Representatives people. How are they going to come up with eligibility issues for student athletes? So I think that's a terrible idea. That's why I don't think this is a good ruling for college basketball. More because I really do feel like this would have blown it up, and whether the NCAA gets to step in, which I know growing up, we joked how the NCAA was national corruption against Alabama. I've now changed that to NCAA stands for not competent at all. Like have no idea what they're doing. Because remember, it was talked about AG at Texas A&M. He's on a temporary restraining order. He's 25 years old. Charles Bediako's 23 years old. Charles Bediako's in school, enrolled in school right now. And I think you know, that's what's hard with some of this too, is Charles is in school, which I understand this is a money grab by him. All this is a money grab from all these different players. But we keep talking about student athletes, and you have Carson Beck on the national runner-up for Miami talking about that he hasn't gone to school in the past 2 years. And oh, by the way, he was at Georgia the previous year in the SEC. I wonder what Greg Sankey has to say about that, which is another step in this of don't know why Greg Sankey decided that he needed to step into this because he hasn't stepped into any of this before. And then we'll get into Bruce Pearl and his fat lips that needed to be going today as well. Like well, I understand why Bruce Pearl made his comments today. His son is struggling at Auburn. He's trying to, protect his legacy because he screwed Auburn over by waiting until August, September to retire. So I understand him stepping in, kind of get some of that spotlight that everything is crumbling at Auburn right now. Oh, and he just got his ass beat by Nate Oates this past weekend as well. But he comes in and talks about how Alabama is an SEC member and Alabama is an NCAA member. Can y'all tell me one time where the SEC has actually done something positive for Alabama? Alabama built the SEC. The SEC is not what it is without Alabama. And I'm not just talking about basketball. I'm talking about the conference as a whole is not what it is without the success that Alabama has had through a lot of different sports. I sit here and I'm like, why is Alabama even in the SEC? Notre Dame, from a football standpoint, can sit back and be independent, play 12 cupcake games, and be in the college football playoff. You're telling me that if Alabama left the SEC, that there's not some national, broadcasting program or an Amazon or a Netflix that wouldn't step up and pay billions of dollars and say, hey, we'll broadcast all your games. And instead of having to do revenue sharing with all these other SEC schools that are leeching off Alabama, that all that can come to Alabama, strengthen the NIL, strengthen facilities, strengthen the coaching salaries and all that. Like I'll argue that with anybody that wants to argue that. But I don't see where the SEC has done anything positive for Alabama since Alabama chose to be a member, was a founding member in the SEC. So as this continued to go on, it just got very, very frustrating as far as how the media was playing this up because as we know, and what I think is going to be funny the rest of the year is anytime that we play an SEC team, because we've already played Missouri, all of them have European professionals on it that have earned money playing basketball. Nate Oates is going to call those people out, not negatively from the standpoint that this guy shouldn't be playing or anything like that. He's going to talk about, hey, so and so played over in Europe. He played for this team. They're really good professionally and all that. Like you're going to continue to hear that. I think in the statement that Alabama made when the ruling didn't go Bediako's way, they talked about that there's 100 professional players that have been given eligibility by the NCAA to play college basketball. And we were talking before we got on the podcast, this kid out in Montana who just got his ninth year of eligibility. Like there are no rules. There legitimately are no rules. So that's why for me, as I hopefully put a bow on this rant, that I really wish this had gone our way. Yes, from bias standpoint, that Charles Bediako, I do think makes us better, gives us more option, gives us more flexibility. But I think if it had gone Alabama's way, it would have blown up the NCAA or what is the NCAA, or would have helped us get not just win around for common sense, but would have allowed common sense to take over college basketball and college athletics. Because I don't hear anything about Alabama winning or the NCAA winning this ruling about Charles Bediako and how it's going to be used going forward to not let these Europeans or these guys come in and get this ridiculous amount of eligibility going forward.
Yeah, that last point there was the point that I was going to make. It's kind of a perfect segue. We, at least I think most people knew that this was how this is ultimately going to go as far as the ruling. I personally think that it's a ruling that it's a good ruling. I'm fine with it, like Christian said. My whole thing though is just the amount of hypocrisy that surrounds it. The fact that I was hoping that potentially you would have this ruling, and like before the ruling was made, I was hoping there would be this ruling, but it could kind of serve as a catalyst for change moving forward. It would kind of serve as a reality check to the NCAA, and that we're going to nip this in the bud right here with Charles Bediako. Also, I mean, not that they would announce it right then and there, but they would then be like, we're going to change these eligibility rules. You can no longer play professionally, and then regardless of if you're in the draft or not, and then come to college. I was hoping that that's what would ultimately happen. That would kind of serve as a reality check. Obviously, that's not what happened. Now, granted, it is still Wednesday. This happened 2 days ago, so there's still time for these things to be changed. And I'm going to keep my fingers crossed. But if that's not the case, then it's still boundless hypocrisy and stupidity by the NCAA, which we've seen time and time again. I hope that I'm wrong in saying that's probably the case. We're probably not going to see any rule changes, but it's just another nail in the coffin of the NCAA. The NCAA's days, I think we can all agree, are numbered. Whether that means that they're gone in 2 years or 20 years, I think the countdown for the NCAA has already started. And so, yeah, I liked your new acronym, Charles. That's how I feel about it as well. Even though I think it was a good call, or a good ruling. Just it's not going to lead to anything, I don't think, which is the problem.
Well, I don't really think I can follow Charles. I think he pretty much said it and wrapped it up there. The only thing that I think you have to add when you're making these eligibility rules is you have to define what a professional is. You have to define it. You can't say, okay, well, if he played in Europe, but he hasn't played in college yet, or if he went to the draft from college, he willingly gave up his eligibility. But at the same time, when you enter the draft, it doesn't matter where you are. You're giving up your eligibility. It doesn't matter if you're, if you're going straight to the G League Ignite or entering whatever, you're giving up you had given up your college eligibility in the past. So that shouldn't matter. So they've got to define it going forward. From a standpoint of not having Charles Bediako, it hurts depth wise. And it hurts against, I feel like it, hurts against some teams with a little more size. Offensively, yeah, I know he had 12 points versus Auburn, I think. but I think he had 13 against Ole Miss, something like in double digits against Tennessee. But as a whole, offensively, we're a little better. We're better when Bediako's not in the lineup. And that's not, to me, that's not just me saying, okay, well, I'm not trying to cope, right? We are better. We are able to space the floor more. We don't have to keep anyone in the dunker spot. Teams can't sit in drop coverage against us because you have what just happened tonight is teams try to sit in drop coverage, and Aiden Sherrill pops and knocks down a 30, right? Teams can sit in drop coverage against us when you have a traditional big that's a rim runner, and make it a little bit tougher on us. So essentially, I actually think we're going to be okay. But we'll find out.
Another thing I want to say too, real quick, is another one thing I want to say real quick too is another way this could be solved is that just change the way the draft is situated. I think you have the perfect draft already with the MLB draft. You have players that can enter into the draft process, go all the way through, get drafted by a team. Now, it's a little different because there's so many players, but there's a heck of a lot of players in college basketball too, and football. But be able to submit your name, and by the time you get picked, decide, okay, is this a contract that I want to pursue, or do I want to return to college? You have that option. Just take that principle, apply it to basketball and football, and you have the exact same thing. Let players go through the draft process, see what, they already get the draft grade right now, but then they get to see where they're drafted. And if they don't like it, they can go back to college. If they choose to sign a contract, you're done. Eligibility is over. Like, no way you're coming back. And so you give the players more power, which I know we've given the players a lot of power over the past, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. But right now, I just think that's another way you could solve this issue. It wouldn't completely solve the entire situation, but it would go a long way to fixing a lot of the problems that we have currently. Sorry, Charles,
Richard Hendricks said it perfectly on another show that I was listening to on Monday, and that's exactly what he said and exactly what he was talking about. He was talking about how we need to go to the baseball model, and how basically the NBA needs to draft as soon as college basketball season's over, just like baseball does. I mean, yeah, but I know baseball and basketball, completely different sport. In baseball, you're having to go through, minor leagues, so it's not as big of a deal if you fill in your roster, but things can be worked around. But this model's got to change, and I think in the next collective bargaining agreement that the NBA is working, I think they're going to eventually change to where you can be drafted right out of high school. So I think that will help a little bit. But again, my main point is the wording, your verbiage, your wording needs to change on what's you defining what is a professional and what isn't.
Also, I think this would also, you're not just pleasing players here. I think there's a lot of coaches that would love a draft that takes place right after the season's over, because you're not having to sit and twiddle your thumbs and wait for your players to make a decision while you're trying to build a roster for next year, while you're trying to get the team in order. If you have that, let's say the season ends, in second week of April, like it always does, have it the first week of May, right? Have that draft. That's such a quick turnaround. Coaches would love that. And so you're not just talking about pleasing the players, you're talking about pleasing.
The hardest I think workaround would be the combine. So because you have assistant coaches that of NBA teams that run the combine and stuff like that. So I think that would be the hardest part to work around. But again, I feel like you could work around it. But
well, you could probably more encourage, like, be more open in practices to have draft scouts come throughout the year to practices.
Yeah, well, you can also, you also could, NBA teams could argue too, it's not our job to, worry to clean up the NCAA's mess. So you could always argue that from an NBA standpoint as well,
That's
too.
fair. That's fair.
So, who knows? It's just some things that the NCAA's got to change. And again, define what a professional is. That's it. I think if you just define what a professional is.
Well, it used to be easy. If money changed hands, you're a professional, but now that's not necessarily the case.
I've seen a couple comments. I've been asked a couple times, why did Alabama do this? Now that this has gone the way it's gone, this is embarrassing. This is something that we never should have done. We know that if Nate Oates doesn't do this, Brian Hodgson at South Florida does this with Charles Bediako, or another team does this with Charles Bediako. If it had gone that way, then you got Alabama fans saying, well, why did Nate Oates not do this? So this was an opportunity. You took a chance on it. It didn't go the way that you probably wanted it to, and maybe what we expected with him playing so early, because again, you're dealing with the NCAA. But for those who are, sitting back now and seeing this and, well, why did Alvin do this? This is embarrassing. You did it because you had to do it. Because if you don't do it in this day and age, somebody else is going to do it. And I said this when all this got started. Nate Oates has a responsibility to this team, to this university, and to us as fans to put the best team on the floor and to go win a national championship. Yep. And Michael, I agree with you that Charles Bediako off the floor gets us back to what this team has been, where you have 5 guys on the floor that can all spread it out and shoot the three. But what he brings on the defensive side, and obviously experience and leadership, makes us a good team too as well. So you have an opportunity. So you have an opportunity to add somebody like that. You take that chance.
Well, I would really like it if we could. How you would have, like, right when the transfer portal started, and you would have whoever, I don't remember who was tweeting it out or posting it, a list of schools that had reached out to so and so that's entered the transfer portal. I would actually love for a lot of people to be able to see that list for who reached out to Charles Bediako. But I know it's not that those kind of things aren't going to come out, and it's not anybody in here's job to really talk about that or, whatever in respect to them. But I think some people that are talking very loudly would be really surprised when they found out teams that were interested, we'll just say interested in Charles Bediako or someone like Charles Bediako.
I think, Christian, this might be the longest period we've ever gone without you saying something on the podcast.
I'm just listening. I'm glad. This is great having 4 people on here. You guys can, and I think another good thing is that, but because like there's been not so many, but there's been episodes where I haven't been on it. Like you guys have been able to develop a rapport, and so I don't have to talk, which is great. I will say, back to the eligibility thing, I think there's an easy solution for the NCAA. You say you're 19 years old. You set the age that you can come to the NBA or to the NCAA at 19 years old, and then from 19 to 24, you have 5 years of eligibility. If you come in and let's say you're 22, you have 2 years of eligibility. If you're 23, you have 1 year of eligibility. But once you hit 24 years old, you are no longer eligible to play college sports.
Playing devil's advocate here, I think you'd have a lot of pushback on that from an injury standpoint. Players that they'd be worried about getting injured and then having a year essentially stricken from.
But they're already talking about doing away with the whole injury thing and giving them 5 years of eligibility.
Yeah. Honestly, it could be as simple as you just say, hey, if you're not on your parents' insurance anymore, if you can't be on your parents' insurance anymore, you can't play.
They're doing all that while also raising the amount of games you can play in football before, and still be redshirted. Yeah. So I don't know how that's going to work.
Christian, the only issue, because taking what you're saying, a model of like 24 and under. If only there was ever a model that's ever been put together like that. Oh, but that's how Little League is done. And we've been doing it for years. 10 and under, 11 and under, 13 and under. So I agree. Figure out what age it needs to be. I personally feel like 23 should be the age. That's only one difference. But you know, they're talking from football that the redshirt rule should go from 4 to 9 games. Like you just said, get rid of the red shirts, enroll in school, play as many games as you're willing to play in school until you're up to 23 years old. And if you know what, if you get injured for multiple years, like life's tough. All four of us are past college. We can tell you, like, life's tough. Things don't always go your way. This idea that you got to keep getting a medical red shirt and keep getting your medical red shirt. You know, somebody needs to bring back the Enterprise rent-a-car commercial. I think it was Enterprise that it was, going pro in something other than sports. Or maybe that was an NCAA commercial, which
It was NCAA. Yeah.
okay, well maybe they're not, completely incompetent, I guess. When it comes to marketing and putting commercials
We
together, eligibility rules not so much.
we need
But
a
again,
LinkedIn. We need some people with some LinkedIn and NIL deals.
or maybe they should go back to that marketing and actually adhere to it and be like, you know what? You've had your eligibility. It's time to go pro in something other than sports.
Well, so in high school, so there's an age cutoff when you're in the state of Alabama, um, like in high school football. If you turn 19 before a certain date, when the season starts, you're not eligible to play. You're too old. Because you're talking about, I mean, it's essentially a safety issue. You're talking about a grown man playing against teenagers, and it can be the same thing in a way. I agree. I think there needs to be an age restriction, and you know what, the whole thing that it's not fair. That's
Life's not
life.
fair.
It's life.
Yeah, it's not fair. And
You know?
if you can make as much money as you want in those 4 or 5 years that you have in college, but once you hit this age, you're no longer eligible to play in
Right.
college. And you can argue, oh, well, that's limiting earning potential for someone that wants to come back and get their education. You can go earn money marketing wise if you want to. No one's stopping you from going and doing brand deals as a regular person. We're stopping you
Right.
from playing college sports against people that are not the same physical ability or physical acumen that you have because you're 24, 25, 26 years old. Like, it's that simple. Um, I feel like we've droned on enough about
Oh yeah,
this.
absolutely.
Let's get. I know this is probably the biggest part of the podcast, as Alabama did win by 19 points against Ole Miss. There's probably not going to be that much discussion about it. And then we play South Carolina, so it's not like I said, it's a little bit of a slow week unless you're
Yeah.
Joey, who congrats on Valentine's Day is what I've been told.
We
Um,
we still have Auburn to recap.
Oh yeah, we have Auburn too. Oh, that happened.
We beat them in Neville Arena. It's the expectation. Not really much to talk about.
I'll just say again, Auburn, who wants to be the morality police. Like you got fans on the floor that are throwing drinks at officials. You got fans in the stands throwing t-shirts at coaches. Like I think it's time for the jungle to look themselves in the mirror.
I will say this. It's not just fans throwing things at people. You had fans in the arena telling Nate Oates to kill himself and saying that his daughter was a not respectable lady. That's unacceptable for any college program. I don't think you'll ever hear an Alabama um, student section or Alabama fans say that. And if you do, please let me know. I would be sure to call them out. But it's just completely unacceptable to for that to happen. And I know they have a little man syndrome complex because that arena is so small, but like it's no reason to have that type of derogatory, you know, language towards people.
But
Um,
I
They're too
remember being
busy.
in I remember being in school, and Jermichael Green and his team beating Auburn at Auburn in before it was Neville Arena, when it was Auburn Arena, and hearing racial slurs going through the SEC network broadcast. Like that's what Auburn is.
We're too busy. We're too busy making Bruce's fat chance in Coleman Coliseum.
No, but that's too much. That's too much. We can't be messing with his weight. Remember, they wrote whole articles about how insensitive it is that Alabama chants Bruce is fat when Bruce has literally laughed at the chants before. And
I mean,
also Bruce's fat
it's not our
chants.
fault that every Golden Corral employee knows him by name.
Well, also Bruce's fat chant started with Luke Ratliff, which, by the way, if you didn't know who Luke Ratliff is, was a little bit on the heavier side, which made it even more funny. So,
I'm no small individual either. So
Look, I think the perfect example between the two programs, go listen to Chris Stewart call a football game or a basketball game, and go listen to Andy Burcham cry through a football game or a basketball game.
yeah.
The it is always nice going and winning in their place. I believe now Natos has a winning record in that arena. Is
He's
that not
5-3.
correct? Yeah. So I I think that arena's not as scary as it once used to be. So I think but silencing the crowd, there was just during that game, there were so many just moments where Alabama silenced the crowd. Amari Allen hit a three right in front of right over Todd Pettiford, and you saw Pettiford just bend down, put his head down, facing the ground. It was just big shot after big shot after big shot. And just it was for some reason this team plays better on the road, and I don't know what it is about this team, but they play better on the road. And especially now we're starting to see that this team is playing really well on the road in the second half, which is the opposite of what it was early on in the year.
Yeah.
And beat a top 20, and I think Auburn was top 10 going into that game, but beat a top 20 KenPom offensive team, which is something that Alabama teams this year have not done a lot of. It now moves that record to 2-5 against the top 20 KenPom offensive teams. And I know Auburn scored 92 points. I think you got your best shots from Keyshawn Hall and Tahad Pettiford. Pettiford struggled a lot throughout the year. He played really, really well. I didn't feel like there was a ton we did poorly on defense. I think Auburn just has had an efficient offense. But as Michael just said, like, we hit big shots. Amari Allen, Aiden Holloway. I remember LeBaron Bylon stepped back, but Aiden Holloway's three where he got fouled as well. And for a team that has struggled from the free throw line at times, late in games and close games, did a pretty good job shooting the ball from the free throw line and only got 23 3-point attempts up. And, we know this is a team that shoots well from three, so not surprised that you hit 12 of them. But, only getting 23 up is not what we've seen from this Alabama team. So did a good job attacking the paint as well, got some big stops. Rebound, I think we got out-rebounded still, but I think did a pretty good job rebounding too, and lost the turnover battle. I think we lost the turnover battle, the rebound battle, and you still come away with the 4-point win on the road at all.
The turnover battle we lost early on, and I thought we adjusted a lot better. I thought we were playing a little I thought we were pressing a little too much, not from a defensive standpoint. I mean, we were trying to make things happen a little too much early on. Auburn was using the same defensive game plan, or I say the same. I shouldn't say the same. They were playing a similar way defensively to what Florida did. They were switching a lot, and it was different from the Auburn defenses that you've seen in the past. Typically, in the past, Auburn has iced ball screens. If you don't know what that means, is they try to keep the ball screen on one side of the floor so they don't allow you to turn the corner. They just completely take the screen away. If I had a Telestrator, I could draw it up. But, they tried to ice ball screens and cut the floor completely in half and keep the ball on one side of the floor. Instead, they were switching everything, which is what Florida was doing. And so they tried to mirror that game plan, and I think it worked early on, and that was what some of the turnovers were. Well, when we finally adjusted and started getting a little more aggressive with the drives, early on, even though because Auburn was running us off the line, we started getting into a little bit better of a rhythm. And for Aiden Holloway to kind of close that game out, to get, I think there was one point where he had a 9-0 run on his own. I think maybe it was a 7-0 run on his own. Was huge and just kind of poetic, so to speak, really. And to add to, Aiden Holloway is now 2-0 versus Auburn in that arena.
Yeah, who would have thought? Well, I think Auburn fans definitely expected for the backcourt of LeBaron Pylon and Aiden Holloway to be undefeated and very successful in Auburn Arena. Probably just not the way that they thought it's played out with both of them being 2-0 together at Auburn.
And now the key is, and we have a lot of games before we play Auburn again. But the now when you just if you look forward, which I really don't like doing, and I shouldn't even say it, I shouldn't even talk about it really, but I'm going to anyway because I'm a fan and not on the team. So, but Auburn may be in a spot when we're playing them. They may be in a spot where they may be in a desperate spot for. Um, I still think they're going to make the tournament, but if they don't get something fixed here quickly, they may be playing desperate. And we've seen, we've run into some desperate teams and not done great. So they may need that win a lot more than we do. So that's one of those where since we stole one on their home floor, we're going to need to, hold serve at home and make sure that you know, we're playing good basketball versus them.
Yeah, I think that Auburn's gonna. I mean, they lost to Vanderbilt the next game. I think that their schedule kind of tightens up a little bit, makes it a little bit tougher. You definitely could see a desperate Auburn team coming into Coleman, looking to play spoiler. And I'll say this: I expect Florida probably to kind of pull out ahead as far as the SEC is concerned. So like typically that Auburn game at the end of the season is typically either for or already decided an SEC champion, or at least as history has shown over the last few years. Um, if Florida drops a couple of games, I mean, that game could be for an SEC championship. I know Alabama's already lost 4 SEC games, but they're right there in the mix for a double bye. And even, if Florida loses some, which I don't really think that they will, I think they're kind of finding their stride. Um,
Well, I
it
definitely
could,
expect us to be in the mix for a double bye, because I think I mentioned on the space after the Auburn game and probably mentioned it Friday night as we were previewing it. Um, Tonight's win was big. I really don't expect this Alabama team to lose again in the month of February. And I know, and you got a home game against Arkansas next week. That will obviously be tough. All these other SEC games, even though it's against the lower end of the conference, it's the SEC. It's still going to be tough. It's all going to come down to that game at the end of the month at Tennessee. And I think if we're healthy for that game, or definitely more healthy than what we were the first time we played Tennessee, you get Aiden Holloway and Amari Allen out there. I think Amari Allen gives you more minutes against Ament. Obviously, Aiden Holloway helps spread the floor with the guards. But I personally see this Alabama team being 12-4 going into March, where then you've got at Georgia and at Auburn. And so if you can win those next 2 games, I think you're secured for a double bye. There's the potential for a logjam a little bit at that 14-4, 13-5, and could come down to tiebreakers and stuff like that. But I know we'll get into Ole Miss a little bit here in just a second, but I really think this is a team that's about to take off and get back to what they were to start the year.
I agree. Let's quickly jump into Ole Miss. Not really much to talk about with that game. I think the most important thing I mean, maybe there is a little bit to talk about, but Alabama's first half is 32-30, pretty poor shooting. And then in the second half, I think they went 12 of 22 from three. They put out a 61-point second half performance. They win by 19. Latrell Wrightsell hits 7 threes again. Mari Allen was exceptional. You know, the usual suspects as we've come to know. Um, there's a couple of things I want to mention in the Ole Miss game. You go, what was it, 17 of 45 from three, and you shoot, what was it, 63 shots or was it 64 shots? I
You're
can't
talking about
remember.
tonight?
Yeah,
Yeah, we were 26-66 overall, 17 of 45
66.
from three.
Yeah, so my big thing, and I know you shoot 26 free throws, you can't have a shot distribution of 60%, 60 plus percent of your shots are 3-point shots, regardless if your team is a good, even if you make 17 of them, right? Like I think that it inherently makes Alabama easily scoutable to the point where you get into games like Tennessee and you get into games like Florida, and they know that they can just, if they can keep you off the free throw or the 3-point line, like they can stop you offensively. And so Alabama, especially against a team that is so small or significantly smaller in Ole Miss compared to Alabama, as far as size wise, I would have liked them to maybe press a little bit more and get a little bit more 2-point shots. Obviously, they did shoot 26 free throws, so they did at least get to the basket and get to the line. But that's kind of my one complaint. And the other one is eventually these slow starts are going to catch up to you. You're gonna get in front of a team that isn't as good as you are. And maybe that was like the Texas game. Like Texas isn't as good as Alabama. They got out in front, you let them get hot, you kind of didn't start well, and all of a sudden you're in a deficit that you can't come back and play and you can't come back and win. And so eventually that might bite you in the butt and it might put you into a situation where you're potentially losing a quad three game, right? And then that can hurt your resume, especially with us not necessarily knowing. We can assume how the NCAA and how the committee is going to look at the Charles Bediako games, but you don't necessarily know, right? And so you want to try to get as many wins as possible so that when they're coming to the seed discussion, there's no question that Alabama should be at least a top five or a top five seed in the NCAA tournament. So,
So I think tonight a lot of the one of the reasons, in my opinion, for the numerous 3-point attempts too, was just part of what Ole Miss was doing, and it's part of their style of play. They were cutting off a lot of the drives with heavy help, and they were forcing everything baseline, keeping everything out of the middle. It's part of what Chris Beard has done his whole career with the no middle defense. They were funneling. We were attacking and we would get by our man, but then they were funneling them baseline and cutting off our hammer pass or, keeping us from being able to lay the ball in. Just in layman's terms, it was really, they were doing a really good job of keeping us from getting easy shots at the rim. And that to me, that was part of our adjustment was, when they were funneling us one way, instead of cutting off the back side, we were just turning around and, keeping the ball on the same side and getting good open looks. And so I think that was a purposeful adjustment. So I know that we would rather have shots at the rim. So I would think that what you're saying is going to come true more often than, um, more often than it did tonight.
Yeah, we had 21 turnovers last year. Tonight we finished with 6. And I remember a lot of those turnovers being those hammer passes that, trying to hit the guy in the corner and an Ole Miss guy was there or was cutting down to cover the guy and generating a turnover. And we were doing a lot of that. It felt like to start the game of trying to hit those hammer passes that were,
Mm-hmm.
either not a turnover, but not necessarily caught clean and probably getting off a few more rush shots. Talked a little bit before we got on. first half, maybe it was sight lines and stuff like that, but was just way off on a lot of those 3-point attempts. And I think we felt a little bit rushed on the offensive side of just, we don't want to turn the ball over. We need to get a shot up. We're trying to play within our offensive, get to the rim. And it seemed like, the adjustment was let's just get shots up because we know we're a more efficient offense. I mean, we did have a slow start. I thought we were doing some things defensively decently well. I mean, at least well from how we typically play defense. And it just gave the feel that Ole Miss is not going to run away from us on the offensive side. And whenever we start making our shots, not only are we going to get back in the game, but that's when we are really going to be able to take over the game. And luckily, or just part of it because of who we are, we did start hitting our shots late in the first half and then really hit the accelerator to start the second half and blew the game wide open. I know they got it under 10 a couple times, but it was basically a double-digit deficit for a good majority of the second half. And I feel required to say this because I think I say it every game. Aiden Sherrill continues to look great. I continue to be really, really impressed with Aiden Sherrill. I'd love to see him get, talking about getting shots at the rim. I'd love to see us do a little bit more as far as like back to the basket, get him a post touch, because I think teams would double team him because of how good he is playing around the rim, which would allow more kickouts for 3-point opportunities too. They talked about it on the broadcast as well. Like what he's doing at the free throw line in conference play is phenomenal too. Like he can beat you. He's almost the perfect Nate Oates player for a big man because he could beat you at the 3-point line, he can beat you at the rim, and he can beat you at the free throw line. So I just, with all the Charles stuff, Charles Bediako, continue to be really impressed with Aiden Sherrill and don't want him to
Yeah,
get lost in all this too.
I agree. I think he's the perfect big, and it's kind of what we had talked about, what we had all talked about just, together and in group chats and stuff is that when Aiden Trail was signed, it's that we all felt like he was the perfect big for this offensive system. And Christian, I wouldn't say what I was saying. Don't get me wrong. I wasn't disagreeing with what you were saying. I was just I was just saying, I think that's why this happened. I think we would much rather, get shots at the rim and get to the free throw line, more often, typically. But I don't think, I think this is the only, I think this is the only time the rest of the year that we'll see that style of defense that Ole Miss runs.
Well, you also, if you look at it, and this isn't probably exact math because there's and ones and things of that nature, but 26 free throw attempts, which roughly you could assume, maybe not roughly, but like let's just say that those were 13 2-point shots, and you add that to the total, and now you're looking at 79 total shots with 45 being 3-point shots. So it's closer to like a 55% distribution, like 3-point to, you know, 2-point, but I mean, even still, I still think that that's high, but it's not as bad as what it looks like in the if you just look at the pure
Yeah.
box score.
Well, 45 is a lot of threes to attempt. I mean, it
Yeah,
really is.
yeah,
And I think even Oates would probably tell you that it's probably not as, maybe a little bit too high of a number,
yeah.
but
You
who
know, and
knows? Maybe
I
not.
know Ole Miss is on the smaller side as far as height, so this is probably a game that fits better for Taylor Bowen. Of course, he's been a guy that's battled injuries. He only played 15 minutes tonight. He did get 3 points, 4 rebounds. We've seen what he can do when he's healthy. We won the St. John's game because he was able to play the five and did a really good job on Zuby Ejiofor. I know we got out rebounded by 20 plus against Purdue, but he was really critical in us coming back in that game late, getting rebounds. I think he hit some big shots as well. So if he can get healthy, he is he's obviously a smaller five option, but he is a five option that when Aiden Terrell, who, as we know, does better in spurts, he's not a guy that is going to play a ton of minutes back to back to back. So you get Taylor Bowen playing the five, we'd continue to see the emergence of Amari Allen. He's basically since the start of the year. London Jimison's really come on. Now you hope Latrell White can stay healthy, and obviously Holloway, and you got Fallon out there, of course. Still a big fan of Houston Millette. Like you're getting back to the versatility of what this team had early on. But a lot of it does come down to staying healthy, not having so many injuries, which is not something that this team can control, as many people would like to think with strength and conditioning or practice. Injuries just happen. But the ability of Taylor Bowen to stay healthy and to continue to get healthier and possibly play that five a little bit more just makes this Alabama team, I think, even more dangerous going forward.
Absolutely. Um, let's quickly get to the South Carolina game. We're getting close to an hour and a half on this podcast episode. So, um, Charles, you're our resident previewer of teams. What do you got for us for South Carolina?
I'm the resident previewer, but you're the resident up on the hip terms and slang. So help me out here. Is Michi Johnson a double Marfo?
No, he's a Michi.
Oh, he's a Michi. Gotcha. Yeah. So South Carolina's. I'll let you explain that to everybody.
So
But
Amarfo is a player, I forget his first name, but he had transferred to a team and then transferred to a team and then transferred back to the team that he originally came from. And so they started calling it a Marfo. And then Michi Johnson transferred from South Carolina to Ohio State, back to South Carolina to no, transferred from Ohio
started Ohio
State.
State.
Yeah.
Yeah, to South Carolina, back to Ohio State, back to South Carolina.
Yeah. So it's a Michi.
Gotcha.
Kevin Martho is his name, by the way.
Yes.
I think he played at the team that he transferred from and back to was Quinnipiac, if I'm not
Yes.
mistaken.
Yes.
So Michi Johnson, point guard, he's the leader for South Carolina, averaging 16 points a game. A guy who doesn't average double digits for them, but has a ton of SEC experience is Miles Studi. I think when we played South Carolina last year, he was injured. In which when we played South Carolina last year, I think it was the second game of the year and ran them out of the gym pretty early on. I'm actually kind of surprised to look at, South Carolina and see that they got five guys that average double digits in scoring, but it is a drop off there to then Studi at 6.8 points. 11 and 13 on the year, really struggling in conference. This is a, 7:30 Valentine's Day night. Could be a limited crowd, could be not necessarily a sleepy, but just a quiet atmosphere. So is this Alabama team going to be able to get themselves energized, ready to go, take care of business? Because this should be a team you knock out in the first half. And while I would love to see this Alabama team play all 40 minutes and continue to put it on them in the second half, could definitely see maybe similar to like Kennesaw State. You're up a ton in the first half, and then they're both just kind of playing basketball in the second half. And there's a lot of things you're not happy with, but you still walk away with a double-digit win. So it's just another game that need to put in the win column. And I think as Nate Oates said in his press conference tonight, just got to keep stacking up wins right now. Doesn't matter how they come, even though I'm here talking about winning by double digits and stuff like that. However you get the win, just get it.
I think my camera saw a ghost because it just went something. Yeah, I think this is a potential for a letdown game for Alabama. I really do. I think that South Carolina and this South Carolina team and the way Lamont Paris kind of plays is they try to slow you down. They don't want the pace. They want to make a close game and try to beat you close. 2 years ago when they were so successful because they were winning close games. These last 2 years, they haven't done a good job of winning close games and closing them out. And so if it comes down the stretch and it's a close game, it's exactly what South Carolina wants. They want to muddy up the game. So it's definitely an area for a potential, what do you say, like a trap game. But I expect Alabama to come away with the win Saturday night.
Yeah, I expect to win too. I was sorry, I'm just looking at South Carolina's Kim Palm. I was more curious at their tempo. They're 238th in tempo. Talking about the the forces. They have a good shot at slowing the game down. If they can force Alabama to play their pace, and there could be trouble, but I don't think that happens. I will note that 4 of their 5 starting players or routine starters are seniors, and then the 5th guy is Elijah Strong, who's a junior. So they do have a lot of experience in their typical starters. But yeah, this is a team that, like you said, Christian, it's Valentine's Day night. It's probably a pretty quiet gym. It is a road game though, so you never know if there's going to be some surprises in store. But this is hopefully next week we're talking about, you know, Bama's what, third or fourth win in a row. I can't remember how many we've won in a row now. So it shows how late it is. It's 9:30.
Could be similar to tonight's game because Ole Miss is, high 200s as far as tempo. So if Alabama's not hitting their shots, of course, South Carolina is going to be very much in the game. If Alabama has a spurt or a stretch or, a 10-0 kill shot or something like that, which is something we actually haven't done a whole lot this year of have our own 10-0 runs and stuff like that, which I know part of that's you got to play defense and keep them from scoring. But, if we're hitting our shots, I expect us to run away with it. If we're struggling like we did early tonight hitting shots, then South Carolina will very much be in the game until we start going on that run.
And I think one of our keys to the game too, and this isn't just for this game, this is just in general. We need to stop trying to force things early. I feel like we almost every game we come out of the locker room to start, and we're trying to force shots. We're trying to start those 10-0 runs to start the game when you don't have to do that. We need to don't slow down the tempo, but slow your brain down. Settle in. It's okay to miss a basket, but if you miss a basket, just get the rebound. We saw that was a huge issue with Alabama in the first half tonight. And yes, we ended up dominating that game, but there were a lot of missed opportunities on the offensive end of the floor in terms of rebounding in the first half. We ended up correcting that in the second half, but it was an issue early on. So just settle in early, and the shots will eventually fall. Stop trying to force things, and if, like you said, they can jump out ahead and then run away with it, but you can't run away if you're behind.
I just want to make sure that it's a home game for Alabama.
Oh, did I say road? Sorry.
Yeah, you said road game.
Dadgummit. I was looking ahead on the schedule.
Like you said, it's 9:30. Eyesight can get a little challenging.
Yeah.
My old man eyes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Christian. You saved me from getting dragged in the YouTube comments. I appreciate it.
Well, I want to make sure that we're a very upstanding podcast, that we're very educated and informed. Yeah, I don't really have much else to say. As far as our schedule is concerned, we'll have a podcast next week. Probably we'll do a podcast before the games next week. I think this was just kind of a scheduling thing for us this week. Um, if people enjoyed this type of thing, yeah, we're not doing a podcast, or I guess we could do it after Arkansas if we wanted to, because it's a 6 p.m. game. But it's up to you guys. We will probably actually we're probably gonna have a space after that Arkansas game. So we probably won't. We'll probably need to record beforehand, and then well, I think. After the Arkansas space, the next time we would probably have a space was probably the Tennessee game, um, and then probably the after the Auburn game. So we'll probably have 3 more spaces at least in the regular season, and that way we're. Go ahead.
Say we could probably record our pod after that Georgia game, because that's a 5:30 tip on a Tuesday, so we could record that and then just focus on that last Auburn game, which no doubt is going to be a big one.
Yeah, we could do that. Weekly Joe, people have been asking. Weekly Joe is recording tomorrow, and it'll be out on Friday. So I'll be on the lookout for that. The opening day starters came out today, and baseball kicks off, or not kicks off. What do you say? Throws off.
Opening pitch.
First pitch off. What's the terminology? Strikes off. Hits off. Bats off.
Opening
play
pitch.
ball.
Play ball. that starts on Friday, and excited to see this Alabama team. Weekly Joe will be coming out weekly, obviously, Weekly Joe. And then we will have some Tide Machine stuff, Blue Collar podcast. I don't know when that's coming out. Michael Southern and them just kind of release it when they want to. So that's kind of all we got going on here. Um, if you want to like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. If this is what if you enjoyed our ranting and our conversation about Alabama basketball. So other than that, I think we're good to sign off, and we'll talk again soon. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.